Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're located. Thank you for joining us for our first Q&A with an expert seminar of 2025.
Woo!
So we are so excited to have Alli Torban with us today. Kicking us off, our theme of January is upskilling. And so she's going to be speaking to her experience, her practical advice, regardless of whether you're early career, mid-career, or, very experienced and just looking to find ways to keep up with the changing tech world. Hopefully there's something in this talk for everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Alli and let her introduce herself and get started.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Zane.
I was going to say, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. We'll address them as we go.
Yeah. If you want to drop questions in the chat, I can see them pretty easily. So I will answer things as I'm going. And I will also have probably about 15 or so minutes at the end to answer any questions as well. So I'm Alli Torban. I live in the DC area. I am a data visualization designer. I'm a senior data literacy advocate at Data Literacy. So I do a lot of data literacy and data viz trainings. And what else? I am the host of the podcast Data Viz Today, and I recently wrote a book called Chart Spark, all about creativity in data communication. And I wanted to come on today to talk a little bit about my transition from a data analyst to a data viz designer and share some things that I learned that might help you if you're also trying to transition into being a data viz designer and not really knowing how to even start, because I was definitely there. And I have some hard-won lessons that I want to share with you. So first, I'll share a little bit about my path, and so you can see any similarities to your path and see how I navigated some things. And then I'll share 3 key ingredients I have found to upskilling in my career and transitioning careers. Like Zane said, you could be transitioning into being a data viz designer, or maybe you are looking to upskill and keep moving forward in your career. These 3 things will be applicable to you as well. And with each of the 3 things, I'll share a small action that you can actually take today. So this isn't going to be, theory and all that. I want to give you a couple actual actionable little things that you could do today to get this moving. All right, so I'm Alli Torban. Like I said, I started my career as a systems analyst for the government in the DC area. I got a degree in math from James Madison University here in Virginia. And then when I graduated, I had no clue what I wanted to do. I only was a math major because my mom was a math major and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, I guess I'll just do math because it seems like maybe I'll have a lot of options after I do that. I went to a career fair at JMU, and because we're so close to DC, there's a lot of government contractors that come to the career fairs there. So a government contractor was like, "Oh, you're a math major. Come work for us." I'm like, okay. Doing what? I had no clue. And what I ended up doing was being a software tester. So a lot of government contractors here develop custom software for government clients. And so I was just on one of those teams. I worked for the FBI, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's me here at meeting the, I'm at the Joint Chiefs of Staff here. And I was running a lot of SQL queries, helping people learn the software, testing it for bugs, that kind of thing. And, on paper, it was a really great job. And I was very grateful for it. I felt like I had kind of made it. But then also I kept having this nagging feeling that maybe there was something else. Like I don't know. I just didn't feel fulfilled in some kind of a way. I'm sure that you can relate. I didn't know what to do though. And I thought going back to school would help. And I knew I liked maps. So I thought, okay, at night, I'll get a graduate certificate in geospatial intelligence and I can be an analyst, but maybe like for maps. So I'm doing like geospatial intelligence also for the government. And I got the degree and I started applying for jobs and I got offered a job. And then literally the same week, I found out that I was pregnant. And here in the US, I hope it's not still this way. It probably is. But in the US, you have to be at the same job for at least a year in order for them to guarantee you any kind of benefits for taking any maternity leave. Like they should give you something, but they don't have to. So I didn't want to roll that dice. So I actually just stayed in my data analyst job when I had my first daughter. And then also my second daughter, I went part-time. And then after my second daughter, I completely stopped working. And I thought, okay, I'm trying to figure out this toddler baby thing. If you're a parent, like there's no figuring it out. It's just like a lot of chaos. But I thought, okay, I'm going to stop working. I'm going to figure this out. And during this time, maybe I can figure out a kind of a career pivot I could do to uh, do something more fulfilling, because that's what I wanted to do. I was trying to find something more fulfilling, something I could do from home, a flexible schedule, basically a unicorn job, right? I had high hopes that I could find something like that. And at the time, so I was trying to figure this out. At the time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts, because when your hands are busy with baby stuff, then podcasts are really the kind of a lifeline into the real world, and you can have your hands free. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I found the podcast called Data Stories by Enrico Bertini and Moritz Stefaner. And they seemed like they were having so much fun. And I just loved how they talked about the data visualization field. It's like, wow, this is a job. You could design charts as your full-time job. I had no clue. So I was listening and I started creating my own graphics. This was actually my first chart in Tableau, which I really liked this. I thought this was really good because I thought the colors were really pretty. But I also knew I had a inkling that I had a lot to learn. So I started listening to a lot of podcasts, and then I thought maybe I could accelerate my learnings by starting my own podcast. And I was definitely not the person that would start a podcast. Very shy, never the first to raise my hand in class. Like nobody would ever believe that I would be someone to start a podcast. But I felt like I had no other idea to accelerate my learnings. I thought I could actually talk to accomplished dataviz designers and basically ask anything I wanted if I had my own podcast. So I decided to launch it. So this was March 2018. I launched the podcast, and I was too afraid to actually interview anybody live at the time. Yeah, Jessica, it's so brave, sort of. I was too scared to interview anyone live because I didn't trust myself to know which questions to ask, partially because I was just joining the field. So what I did was I created a Google form, a questionnaire, and I would ask someone, I found a visualization that I liked, and I would say, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Can I send you this questionnaire asking you questions about, where'd you get the data from? What was your design inspiration? What were any problems that you had? How did you overcome them? What tools did you use? And then I would take their questions and or their answers to the questions, and then I would summarize it and basically make an episode out of it, just me speaking solo. And I did that for, I don't know, 20 or 30 episodes until I finally had the courage to interview somebody live. But one really smart thing I did at the beginning was, once I had that person do that questionnaire based on the visualization that I liked, that I asked them about, I would create an inspired visualization based on what I had learned from what they did. And so I wasn't just sitting back and listening or, regurgitating the things that they said. I was taking the time to create something based on what I had learned, and I was sharing it. So you can go back on the show notes and look at the things that I created at the beginning. And, a lot of it's not good, but I was learning. And you have to allow yourself to be a beginner. There's no shame in being a beginner. That's why I kept telling myself, I'm telling people on the podcast I'm a beginner, so they shouldn't expect too much of me when I'm doing this. So if you have the bravery to be a beginner, then it will just open you up to being not a beginner, because that's just the natural flow of things. You start as a beginner, you do the thing, and then you're not a beginner anymore. So then, I created a lot of visualizations. I was hired as a dataviz designer. And now I work as a freelance information designer. So I work with a lot of different clients, making charts and illustrations, data comics. And like I said, I also work for data literacy as the senior data literacy advocate, giving a lot of talks and trainings on data literacy and data visualization. And I also wrote a book called ChartSpark. I guess it's about a year old now. And I wanted to put all my learnings of becoming a dataviz designer and learning how to be more creative as a data person who doesn't really, I wouldn't call myself, I was actually kind of embarrassed to call myself a designer a long time ago because I didn't think I had any kind of design or creativity skills, but I learned how to do it. So I put it all in a book, and I actually have a whole bunch of Audible credits if you like to listen to audiobooks from my publisher. So you can email me if you're interested in an Audible, free Audible credit. So you can download the book and listen to it. Okay, so throughout this journey from an analyst to a dataviz designer, my key decision was to be brave enough to start a podcast. And you might be thinking, well, I mean, that's kind of obvious. That was the pivotal moment in my journey, is starting it, and it's what got me to this point. But what are the specific things that got me there? Well, I found that podcasting started and accelerated three really important aspects. First, my skill, like technical skill, design eye, how to use particular tools. Those are really obvious. I mean, that's when you say upskilling, skill is in the word upskilling. So that's obvious. But there's two other things. Portfolio. Remember, I said how I was creating visualizations while I was creating the podcast. I was creating inspired visualizations. So that allowed me to, first of all, practice my skills and give me about 20 or so visualizations to choose from to create a portfolio to then start applying to jobs. So you really do need a portfolio in our field. If you're a dataviz designer, dataviz engineer, I mean, it's hard. It's hard making a portfolio, but the nice part is you don't need some kind of fancy degree. You can just show that you can do the thing and show it in your portfolio. And it's like, well, there's the proof. I don't need a fancy degree. I know how to do it. And here's the proof. So I actually kind of love that about our field, is that you can prove that you can do it by putting together a portfolio. And then also networking. I am inherently talking to other people, reaching out to other people, forming connections. And this is a often overlooked and very uncomfortable, honestly, part of trying to upskill, change a career, upgrade your career. You really have to network, because no one is going to just plop that perfect opportunity in your lap. It's just not going to happen. I know we all wish that we're going to receive that email from someone being like, I know you are an unknown person with no skills, but I see your potential. So here's the perfect job. That's just not going to happen. So people hire people. So you have to network. And that was just inherent in my podcast, in having a podcast. But you can actually do all three of these things without a podcast. You want to start a podcast? All for it. You can email me and I will give you all my tips and hard-won advice, but you do not need a podcast to upskill and to acquire these three really important things. So the first thing, skills. The biggest thing with skills is, first of all, you have to know which skills to hone, which is tough. And then you need to have really specific practice to hone those specific skills. So first, how do you know which skills to practice or to acquire? Well, what I did was go to LinkedIn. I actually caught this screenshot today, but this is what I did back in, I guess it was 2018. Went to LinkedIn and searched in the jobs area, and I just wrote data visualization designer. And maybe you want to be a data viz engineer, or just type in whatever you feel like is your ideal job. And it's totally okay if it changes later on. I mean, it probably is likely going to be, as you create things, you'll be like, actually, I don't really like the part where I am finding data and cleaning data, or I don't like coding. I actually like the design part. You'll find, as you create things, the parts that you like the most, and you'll probably hone what kind of jobs you're searching for. So anyway, go to LinkedIn, in their job section, type in what job title you think you would like to do, and then just scroll down, pick one, scroll down, and see what kind of skills and competencies they list. And just think of this as a starting point, because I found a lot of times hiring managers don't even really know what to expect from a database designer, because it's kind of a rare job, right? So they just seem to just dump a whole bunch of stuff in here, like Tableau, Power BI, Excel, Python, R. Like there's a lot of stuff. You think, oh my gosh, am I going to have to be an expert in all those things? I mean, I don't know Python. I obviously know Excel. I know a little bit of R. I barely know Power BI, but I mostly use Tableau. And I would probably be qualified for something like that. I don't have all of those skills, all of those tools. So just be aware, sometimes they just list like a kitchen sink of tools and you might not need to know of them. But if you really don't know where to start, look for jobs that you might be applying for and look to see what skills and tools they're asking for and pick one to use as your tool to improve upon and to learn with. It's a really great place to start. I know it seems obvious, but when someone told me, was that 6 years ago? I was like, oh, duh. I should just look to see what people are asking for and at least start there. It's a good place to start. So once you figure out like, okay, I'm going to use Tableau and I need to create some visualizations. What you can do to kind of do what I did, where you take a visualization that you just find in the wild. Maybe you're looking at the newspaper or, online, WashingtonPost.com, New York Times. You can go to the Data Visualization Society Information is Beautiful Awards and see what visualizations got awards last year or previous years and find ones that resonate with you and analyze it. Think X, this is my X-ray prompt from my book, X, excited. What specifically got me excited about this graphic? Rules. How do I think they're following dataviz best practices? And maybe I don't really know many best practices at this point. That's okay. Just what do you think they're doing right here? Anarchy. How did they throw out the rules? What do you think? What risks do you think they're taking with this visualization? And then how might you use this in your own work? What are some conditions in which whatever things you found would be useful? And if you think about it, that's what I was doing when I was analyzing those visualizations early on with my podcast. I'd find something that I liked. I'd ask them a bunch of questions about it. And then I would find a particular example. I'll show you some examples in a minute. I find a particular aspect that I liked and then use that as a jumping off point for my visualization. So if you might see a visualization and think, I don't really know how to use this as inspiration, X-ray it first. So find something you like, X-ray it, and you'll find some tidbit in there where you can use it as a jumping off point for creating your own visualization that will help start honing your skills. So here's an example. This is a graphic by Gabrielle Marie, my friend, and she created this visualization about percentage of online dating users who say these profile informations are important. So we have profile picture, type of relationship, children, and I just love this visualization partially because it's very polarizing to some people, but I love it. And so I X-rayed it. So excited overall. I love this feeling she created of calm and happy. I love the transparency in the bars. The 3D icons is a cool touch. Rules. She has that very precise grid and bar labels. I like how she labeled the bars at the top. And anarchy. Obviously the 3D. A lot of people don't like 3D, but here we're talking about dating profiles. I mean, people aren't landing a plane based on this data. So I think this is okay. Transparent bars. Overall, I just really love this depth effect she has. You notice the person sitting on the phone, and then behind that you have a sand dune. Then you have the bar chart. Then you have more sand. Then you have the sky. It's a really cool depth effect that she did by layering it. And then I might use these colors or this layering effect she did if I'm trying to set a mood or create an emotion, grabbing attention. Maybe if I'm working on a project where grabbing attention is really important, maybe I'll try to use some of these. That's how I would use the X-ray prompt on a visualization that struck me in some kind of a way. So then I could then pick out something here that I liked or found inspiring and then use that as a jumping off point for my visualization that I'm going to create to practice my skills. And I would encourage you to X-ray a lot of things. And you can create a spreadsheet with links. I've done that before. I've also, as you can see, just put it on 3x5 cards, printed things out. Whatever way you want to do it, just do it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You could do multiple things, or you could just x-ray it in your head. Just don't let perfection stop you from actually doing it. So x-ray any inspiration you have and then try it yourself. Create something. You have to create something. This was an example from episode 7, Susie Liu. I found this really nice graphic, just a very actually simple line chart showing Netflix challenges HBO in the 2017 Emmys. And what I liked about this was how she pulled the x-axis labels, these years, up into the center, because your eye line is in between HBO and Netflix, right? Because that's what she's drawing your attention to. So why not just put the axis up in the center? I thought that was so clever. And at the time, I had never really noticed or taken specific notice of the fact that you could label your line chart just at the end of the line, and it's way easier than having a legend. So I was inspired by that, those couple of elements. So when I created my inspired viz, I grabbed some data about how DC residents were commuting. And so as you can see, I pulled my x-axis into the center in between these major lines, and then I labeled the lines at the end. So, I mean, it's not winning any awards, right? But I'm practicing. You don't have to create some award-winning graphic every time you create something. Find some little technique that you liked and apply it to yourself. And this was me learning how to use Tableau as well. Here's another one from Ben Matheson. This was episode 11. And I really liked this. This was visualizing races in the Iditarod. So each line is a person racing. And then I really liked this kind of like on and off coloring that he did, like these dots or lines showing run time and rest time. And I had never seen that before, where it's kind of just using a line or a dot to kind of visualize this on off in a sequence. So I used chess as my data, and then I was trying to visualize when the champion Magnus Carlsen or a different participant, when they castled in chess. So I was kind of using the off on thing again with these dots. So you can see these don't really look alike at all, but I found some specific technique that I liked and applied it to my own work. I created something and I learned a new skill. And you probably see this beautiful one by Valentina Deathblow. This is from episode 14. She has using the visual metaphor of the poppy to represent world wars, people lost in world wars. And I really loved how she was using this visual metaphor and using an outside element to convey an emotion. So I use that inspiration to create this tree made out of wire. I made it for my mom when she retired from teaching. And I had each branch represent the year that she taught. And then each little coiled leaf represented how like 100 students that she taught that year. So, like 1 year, one branch is 1 year. And then if she has 3 leaves on there, then she taught like 300 students that year. So I took this visual metaphor idea and applied it to my own work. And then this one is from Sonia Kalpers, episode 28. This was about mascaras, different attributes of mascaras, which I really loved. And so she was using this little eye and the eyelashes and everything to represent different. She was using different glyphs to represent different attributes. And I just loved that. And I loved the this horizontal landscape view. So I used that as inspiration, and I visualized different attributes of women who answered the Data Visualization Society survey back in 2018. And you could see from this legend, different glyphs represented different things. So you can see these are similar, but I was being inspired by them, and it helped me create work and practice my skills. So my challenge for you is to go buy a newspaper or just go on some news outlet that has graphics. And if you can buy the newspaper, I really love that, because I just actually like going through it and cutting out all the graphics and laying them out like this and x-raying them, and just write down all your x-rays, and it'll start helping you hone your eye to seeing those little things that you could practice. And if you can't see a technique or a skill that you could try, then you won't really know what to try and you won't be improving yourself. So use other people's work in order to find things that you could skill. Let's see. JC says, can you mention a few tools one might use to create charts like that? So this was created with Adobe Illustrator. Very, very tedious, as you can imagine. You could probably code this too if you knew how to code D3. Let's see. That was by hand. This one was Tableau, and then I brought it into Illustrator to do other stuff. And I think this one that Ben did, he coded that in D3. I don't know what tool Susie did. She probably coded this one. My visualization here was in Tableau. Which chart specifically? Oh, Zane, I think you were asking. Mention a few tools. You could use Flourish Studio. That's a really nice and easy tool to use. Let's see, I'll type it in the chat. Flourish Studio, Data Wrapper, rawgraphs.io, Tableau, Power BI. Just a few chart tools to start out with. Let's see. I'm thinking if they're all free. They all have free plans. Oh, your D3 book came today. Nice. Favorite tool? I mean, very personal. I like Tableau because it might be because I learned it first. That's always kind of hard to tell. But I do like how you can create some very basic things, but you can also kind of go wild and do all sorts of things. And that you can save your graphic from Tableau as a PDF and then bring that into a vector-based software like Illustrator. And then you can like edit the elements a little bit. So if you wanted to have a little bit more of a finer touch to the graphic, it's a little bit easier when everything's broken up into elements that you could just drag around. So you can bring it into Illustrator. And then if you save it off as an SVG, you can bring it into Figma because Figma, as far as I know, doesn't do PDFs yet. I do like Figma better than Illustrator. And if you think of any other questions, keep dropping them. But my challenge for you for the skills is to X-ray some graphics. Go find a newspaper, cut out all the graphics, X-ray it, see if you can start finding those little things that you can add to your toolbox. Tableau, PDF, SVG, Figma. Yep. Yeah, it is helpful. Okay, so that was skills. Portfolio, next thing. So I think within 9 months, I had enough work where I could pick 3 graphics where I was like, okay, I'm not embarrassed about these. And I think they show that I can create good work. And in creating a bunch of visualizations, it not only gave me a portfolio, but it helped me learn a bunch of new tools. Like this Women of Dataviz was an Illustrator. This middle map, it was showing the health of trees in New York City. That was using Mapbox. And then the one on the right, this district grading perspective, that was Tableau and Illustrator. So like I said, I created all these bar charts in Tableau, and then I exported it as a PDF and brought it into Illustrator so I could kind of, you can see how I stylized some of the elements. So kept the data, accurate and everything, but just making it a little bit more designy. And it also helped me hone my design eye because, like I said, I was a math major, so I had no design skills whatsoever. So I kind of had to lean on other people's work to see what was working and what wasn't working to help me hone that skill. And it also gave me a design process. And so when I was interviewing and someone said like, okay, what if we drop this data set on your lap? Like what would you do next? You have to know what your process is. So creating a bunch of work gave me new tools, new skills, helped me with my design eye, and gave me a design process that I knew I could repeat and regurgitate to someone else and be like, this is my design process when I was trying to get hired. And like I said, portfolio is super, super important. In our line of work, I don't think you can get away without having one. And it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing ever. Just start creating things, pick the best ones at the time. I know it's probably going to be disappointing, but pick your best at the time, at this moment. And as you're applying for things and creating more things, replace them when you create something that you think is better. You have to create graphics in order to develop your skills and build a portfolio. There's just no shortcut for this. There's just not. This is the work. This is the hard part. And I love the quote by Austin Kleon: forget the noun, do the verb. Forget that you want to be a dataviz designer and just start designing dataviz. And then you're just going to acquire the skills to become a dataviz designer. Just stop. I felt like I was tied up in knots thinking about, I want to be hired as a dataviz designer. And then I read this quote from his book, Steal Like an Artist. I was like, oh, if I just started to design charts, I am designing data visualization. So doesn't that just make me a dataviz designer? I don't really need anyone's permission, actually. I can just start creating it. Oh yeah, Jackie says, don't fake it until you make it. Do it until you become it. Yes, I love that. What resources or communities did you find most helpful during your transition? I joined the Data Visualization Society, which I'm assuming you're a part of. And it was actually newish. I don't think maybe Zane, you can help me, in 2019, maybe that it was, I think it was before COVID. But when I started, like in 2017, 2018, it wasn't there. So when DVS started, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I can join the Data Visualization Society and talk to like-minded people. And we also have a group, me and Gabrielle Marit, Duncan Gear, and Will Chase. We have a group called Elevate Dataviz Learning Community. And so that's a small group of people specifically who are looking to either freelance or do like more creative data visualization design. Oh yeah, thanks, Zane. So that's a couple communities. I'll try to think of more. I'm sure that there's more I'm thinking of. Yeah, Julie says, just start, let your curiosity lead you. Yeah, really think about your hobbies. I do think it's kind of playing on hard mode when you are picking topics that you don't know much about, because if you've created any visualizations, finding data is really hard. Seeing if the data is complete, knowing all the nuances of how it was collected, what its limitations might be, all those kinds of things is very hard if you're not familiar with the topic. So like when I did that chess visualization, I don't play chess. So there was a lot that I had to learn to even create that. That's kind of playing on hard mode. Like Julie said, follow your curiosities, maybe start with your hobbies, things that you know about already. Maybe you're really into knitting, or you have kids and something about kids is interesting to you. I don't know, whatever you are already in and you know about, maybe start with that as your topic, because it'll be a little bit easier for you. Let's see. Cedric says, how do you avoid wasting time trying to learn very difficult tools? What are some tips you have for being efficient while learning and getting to a point where you can add it to your portfolio? Yeah, it is very hard to estimate how much do I need to learn this. I like to get the basics down. So I'm experimenting, I'm getting some basics down, and then letting need drive anything extra that I do. So it's nice to know what the tool can do. So something like Tableau Public, you can go in there and seeing all the cool things people are doing. So then once I knew the basics, I could see what some options are. Like, whoa, you can make a radar chart, or you can do this, that, or the other, like that's out of the box. So without me having to go and looking up all these sine and cosine things in order how to make these crazy Tableau things, I just waited until I had a need for it. And in the back of my head, I knew it was possible. And then I could go look up a blog post on someone giving a tutorial and then figure it out. So if it's not interesting to you and you're not doing it just because it's like inherently fun for you to try to do this particular thing, then I would say put it on the back burner until you are kind of forced into it. But knowing the basics and then seeing what's possible, keeping your eyes open for what's possible so you can file it away, that's kind of the best way that I have found. Were there unexpected skills or knowledge you have found valuable in your data visualization career? Unexpected skills or knowledge. Well, I am kind of finding that once you kind of have some data viz basics down, some tools, there's a lot of skills that are really important that that really you could use on any job, like being able to speak in front of people. I kind of learned that skill from podcasting. It allowed me to kind of ease into it. I really was not a good public speaker at first. Like doing something like this, I would be just absolutely terrified all day, the day before and the day of and everything. But now it's like I can hop on and I feel totally fine. But that's through practice. But I feel like being able to speak in front of other people was monumental in moving forward my career. So when I was on a dataviz team, well, I was actually embedded on the design team. I was the dataviz designer. I was a couple years into my podcast, so I was more comfortable speaking in front of other people. And our team had to give a presentation to our president. And everybody on our team, my team was like terrified of public speaking. And I was like, oh, well, I'll do it. And so in my boss's mind, I just became like this golden child because I was willing to speak in front of other people and he was terrified to do it. So I know it's not really specifically dataviz related, but being able to speak in front of other people has really elevated my career in ways that I would never have guessed. And it gets me doing something like this, and I get to talk to so many great people, and I'm meeting all of you. So it just opens up a lot of doors. And we'll talk about that third thing in a few minutes about networking. Being able to speak in front of other people, it really puts your networking into overdrive. Let's see. When you started transitioning into dataviz, did you consider the pay gap between design and engineering as one of the factors to decide which route to take? That is a great point. Technical skills do seem to get paid more than design skills, and it totally is a consideration. And I think it's really up to you on whether you need that that bump in pay. Like that's just a reality of life. Like people need to get paid. People need to eat. My consideration was, do I want to spend my time coding? And for me, it wasn't for me. I felt like I was going to be miserable if I had to code all the time. I knew I could do it. I don't have a particular talent or anything from it, but I did enough where I knew I could do it. But I felt like that doing some practice visualizations, I did some coding, I did some R and all that. And it wasn't I just didn't get into the flow. You know how sometimes when you're working on a graphic, there's particular parts where you really just get in the flow and you're just loving every minute of it. I felt like the engineering or coding part just wasn't doing it for me. And so I didn't want to build a career that I wasn't actually going to enjoy doing, because I'm going to have to do this for another like 20 or 30 years. So, but I do totally understand you want to have the most, the highest paying job, especially if you need it, you're supporting other people, you have dependents. But I would just also keep in mind, you're going to have to be doing this for many, many years. So try to pick something that you're going to enjoy doing day in and day out. Okay, so the challenge for this portfolio part is pick one of your favorite newspaper graphics that you clipped from the previous challenge and create your inspired viz and just time box yourself. It's so easy to be like, well, I could do this, I could do that. Time box yourself. I would say it's probably realistic a couple of hours, a few hours, maybe 3 hours. Because unless you have some data just readily available, finding data, cleaning data, it is a lot of work, but you do need to time box yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to run around in circles and never finish anything and never have anything for your portfolio. So time box yourself. That's why I really liked the Makeover Monday challenge. Zane, would you mind grabbing the link for that? I don't know what it is. I think it's like makeovermonday.uk or something like that. But Makeover Monday, I'm not sure. I don't think they're active anymore, but the past weeks are still there. And what I liked is they would give you a data set, and then you could, thanks, Zane, you could create a visualization from that data set, and a bunch of people would create it so you could see what other people did. So if you're looking for a kind of a somewhat easier data set to pull from, you just want someone to give you something, go to makeovermonday.com. Oh, still active. Okay, thanks, Pete. They're still active. You can go there, look up past weeks and download a data set and see what other people did. Maybe it'll give you some inspiration. And time box yourself, being like, okay, I'm going to create something in under 2 hours and then add it to your portfolio and call it a day. And you can try again another time and maybe create something better and down the road. And switch it out in your portfolio, but you have to start with something. Okay, so we talked about skills, portfolio. Last word is networking. And nobody likes to network, but people hire people. Machines aren't hiring us. I mean, maybe it's filtering out your resume, but ultimately, people hire people. So they need to know about you. And expanding your network is going to help you learn about new opportunities. So, things like being active on LinkedIn. Someone might send you an opportunity. Oh, I heard you were trying to transition into becoming a dataviz designer, and this my friend posted this job. So you're kind of like spreading out your tentacles, having other people listen for you, and it'll help you find new opportunities. And expanding your network is going to help you stay top of mind. So maybe every month you're going to, like in my city, we have the dataviz DC group, and every month they have a meeting, and someone gives a talk, people mingle, they have dinner. And if you are seeing people month after month, a hiring manager is eventually going to be there with an opportunity. And if they're seeing you every month, they're like, oh yeah, I remember I just saw so-and-so at dataviz DC, and they might actually be interested in this job. So it helps you stay top of mind. And it helps you discover new tools or techniques. So if you're talking to other people, you realize, oh, what tool did you use for that? Like you guys were just asking me, what tool did you use? And someone might say, oh, I used X, Y, and Z. You think, oh, I've never heard of that. I want to try that. So it helps you find new tools and techniques. And it might help you spin up a collaboration. This has happened quite a few times with me. I'm just like chatting with someone. They have this skill. I have this skill. We both want to do a particular thing, and we're able to collaborate, which is so fun. And it might help you create a piece of work that you never would have been able to create before. So maybe you have a really good design eye, and you meet someone who has really great coding skills who doesn't really have a great design eye, and you combine forces and create this amazing scrolly telling visualization. So networking has a lot of benefits to it. So how would you expand your network? Obviously, you can go to events, in person or virtual. In person, I highly recommend, because there's just something about shaking someone's hand and seeing them face to face that makes it a little bit more memorable and makes the connection feel a little bit stronger. Can speak at events. Like I was saying before, being able to stand up in front of people, man, if you just think about it, if you're going to an event and you're talking to someone, that's a one-to-one type of networking. If you are speaking at events, that is a one-to-many type of networking. So you're kind of, you're being very efficient in your networking. People can see all of your, see your expertise in the work that you've done. And everybody knows you at that point when you're up in front of the room. And I know it's tough, but it's definitely a worthwhile skill to work on and to acquire. And share your work on social media. You are allowed to be a beginner. And I know it's really hard sharing your work on social media, but it helps people realize that you create things and you're a data visualization designer or engineer. If you are just kind of making things in anonymity and only the people that you applied to jobs for see it, it's really minimizing your chances of being seen. So share it on social media. I know it's hard, but if you think about it, like I'm a beginner and I'm allowed to be a beginner, then it kind of takes the edge off a little bit. Like this was when I made that DC commuting one. I just shared it on Twitter, back when Twitter was a thing. And I only had, I don't know, maybe 10 followers at the time, but I got 69 likes. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. For a basic line chart, like people are interacting. I got a couple DMs about it saying, I don't know, it was something about, you know what came from it? Someone from a local newspaper contacted me asking if I could create a visualization for them. So, I mean, that was something that came out of just sharing some little line chart. Oh yeah, Blue Sky. Yeah, Blue Sky has been pretty cool Twitter replacement. So start sharing, and nobody wants to share on social media because there's always going to be some kind of troll, some kind of you're opening yourself up to critique. But what I have found is there's a couple questions I ask myself when someone says something about my visualizations. First of all, does this person have my best interest at heart? If it's just some random troll, you can read the comment. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but feel free to discard it. Do they have expertise in this area? A lot of people think they're, little sideline backseat dataviz designers, right? They have no clue what it takes to actually create something. They don't know what constraints you are under. Do they have expertise? And based on their comment, is there anything that I could actually improve upon? If not, kind of sounds like just trolling. And is your mistake, if you did make a mistake, is it hurtful in some kind of way? If yes, then you can correct it. Nobody ever looked twice at someone who made a mistake and then said, sorry, here's how I would correct it. The only time it's bad or embarrassing is if you do the mistake and ignore it. Overall, a big mindset shift for me was to think of critique as a gift to improve. There's just no way to get better, especially at the beginning, if nobody is giving you feedback on what you could do better, because you don't know enough to know what you could do better, or you don't know if you're stepping in a really bad faux pas or mistake unless somebody tells you. So rather than everybody just looking at your graphic and rolling their eyes like, oh, I can't believe this person did that. If someone DMs you or comments and tells you, be grateful that they helped educate you and thus improved your skills. And of course, having critique in a smaller group of people who have your best interest at heart and have expertise, that is the ideal. But start sharing your graphics online because it's going to help you network. And then also it can help you improve your work by getting hopefully some nice and helpful critiques. So share your work on social media and then interact with other people's work on social media as well. That's a really, really easy way to start expanding your network and making connections with people who are hiring or who you could collaborate with. So that brings me to the last challenge, is to find the author of a graphic that you like. Maybe it's one that you clipped in the newspaper, or maybe, anywhere else online. Find the author of the graphic that you liked and DM them on social media, or try to email them and tell them specifically what you liked about their graphic. You just X-rayed it, so you have something specific that you liked about it, and tell them about it. And don't ask for anything. Don't be like, oh, hey, so-and-so from Washington Post, I really liked your graphic because of X, Y, and Z. Are you guys hiring? Like, that's too soon. It's too soon. Network by expanding your network, sharing what you like about other people's graphics, and think of it as planting seeds, starting to cultivate relationships, and just reaching out to someone and telling them genuinely something that you liked about their graphics is a really easy way to do that. Let's see. Bobby says, can you provide the slide of X-ray explanation one last time before you finish, please? Awesome presentation for it. Yeah, of course. So I think that's about it. Hold on. I was going to just recap, but let me go back to X-ray real quick. There we go. Oh yeah. Thanks, Zane. I think I talked about it in that episode, right? I talked about X-raying in that dataviz today episode. But if you want to screenshot this is the X-ray prompt. All right. So just summarize. Okay. So these 3 things, you don't have to start a podcast to do these things to upskill, but you can. Especially if you want to start practicing, like improving the skill of speaking in front of people. I feel like a podcast is a really good way to do it because you're recording it and then you can edit it, or re-record and edit things. So you can do it, but you don't have to. To build more skills, you can just forget the noun, do the verb, start making things. Look in LinkedIn, find the skills or the skills and tools people are asking for and jobs you might want to be doing. Start X-raying other people's graphics to find little techniques and skills that maybe you can try and improve on. Create a portfolio, start building it piece by piece. Use your X-rays as jumping off points for your portfolio pieces. And then networking, reaching out person by person. Only good things can happen from networking. And if you think about networking as kind of like the shaking the hand and, oh, what do you do? All that stuff. It does sound kind of unpalatable, but think of it as one by one. You're trying to make another connection with another like-minded person and see what interesting things they're doing. And it will snowball. You'll find new opportunities. You'll find new collaborations, and only good things come from it. So I'm happy to take on any other questions, and just know that I'm rooting for you. And please feel free to email me if you have any comments or questions. I'll drop my email in the chat. Thanks, everyone. Oh, let's see. Cedric says, through your experience mentoring others, what are some barriers you are seeing today that did not exist in the dataviz field before, and how would you tackle those barriers today? Maybe things that haven't changed much. It feels to me, I could be wrong, it feels to me that the economy and hiring is a little bit slow, and it sounds like it's harder to get a job just because it's really hard to get past all those AI resume things. And I actually have a podcast episode coming out this month with Avery Smith. He is the host of Data Career Podcast, and he helps people become data analysts. But he really helped me see these 3 things that came out of my podcast, because this is what he teaches with the skills, networking, and portfolio, that you really need those 3 things to become a data analyst. And he talked a lot about how these resume filters are these AI ones, like everyone's using it. It's really hard to get past them. And I don't think I don't think those were as common maybe 6 years ago when I was trying to apply for things. So I think that's harder. So keep an ear out for that episode. It's coming later this month, because he gave some tips about that. Things like, really just making sure you have the keywords in your resume from the listing, just something basic like that can really help you getting your foot in the door. And the networking thing, I mean, you can bypass that whole resume filter if you know the hiring manager because you met them at an event. That's always a little hack. You can't always plan on that stuff, but you don't know until you try. I kind of think of it like printing your own lottery ticket, right? If you don't know if it's going to win, but you can at least try. There's something else I was thinking. Oh, like AI. I am concerned. I am wondering if just knowing how to use a tool, I feel like that is becoming less and less important. I think that was more important when I was starting out. And I feel like it's becoming less and less important just because tools are starting to be able to do things with you just typing in kind of like regular language type commands. Like the other day I was trying to work on something in Tableau, and I needed some pretty complicated calculations, and someone more skilled probably knows how to do that. But I just asked ChatGPT and I was able to get, it wasn't perfect first time, but I was able to kind of iterate from there and have it help me in order to get there. So people using AI is going to be more and more common. So I feel like it's still going to be important to know tools, but maybe less important than it used to be. I don't know if that's helpful, but I think if knowing the tool is not as important, then it's more important to understand basic communication. Like, why are we communicating this particular thing? How are we going to communicate it in a way that's engaging? What's the process for creating a visualization, or like maybe a data storytelling piece? What's the process of doing that? And I can use these AI tools to create something faster. I feel like that's going to be more of the important skill for it. Let's see. Malaya, there are no data visualization jobs that show up for me. Are there other job titles you can think to search on LinkedIn? I think if you type in just data visualization, it will search I think it searches the entire job listing. That's my impression. Oh yeah, Zane did a whole bunch of things. Designer, graphic designer, data designer, information designer, data analyst. It is interesting because not everybody knows what to call a dataviz designer. So they might say, hey, we need a graphic designer specializing in making charts. So you do have to do a little bit of sleuthing in order to find things. What I would do is look at the Data Visualization Society survey. I think Zane mentioned it early, SOTI, the state of the industry.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure it has people's titles in there, at least from what I remember. Either people put titles in there or there was something helpful I remember.
There's definitely a lot of information. The 2023 report is out. The 2024 report will be coming out hopefully in a week or two.
Okay. Yeah. Look at the report, and I'm pretty sure there's some sort of like titles field or something where people put in what their actual title is, and that will help you get some ideas on what maybe you could be Googling. Let's see. Rick says, as a freelance cartographer for the past 12 years, I'm wondering how much market is there for freelance data viz. In other words, is most of the data viz work done by employees, or are there decent freelance opportunities? So I have definitely seen fewer data viz freelance inquiries. I have had fewer inquiries this past year. And I know that from our Elevate group, that seems to be across the board. And I don't think that is a indication of the field. I think it's more of the economy and people kind of tightening their belts a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I have seen less need for it recently. But I don't think people are going in-house, or I guess they are, and it seems they just lean on graphic designers to do data viz work. But if you don't really know some data visualization basics, or you don't really know much about data, that's kind of risky. So yeah, it's tough, but I definitely still see a lot of data viz jobs, regular jobs.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So with trying to plan what sort of skills you want to learn, what sort of structure do you have? Do you take it just one skill at a time, whatever you're most interested in at the moment? Do you keep a list? Do you try to structure it so that one thing feeds into the other? How do you go about it practically?
I personally don't like to have a list of things, because you're never really done with something. Kind of like what someone asked before about, like, how do you do it efficiently? You're never really done. So I feel like having a list, it makes me feel like I'm never going to get through it. So what I like to do is you'll start to notice in yourself kind of like an innate energy when you're doing something. Like for a little while I was experimenting with 3D, like this it was like a 3D painting app that I was using, and I was trying to see what I could do with visualizations by using it. And it was really interesting to me to try to figure it out and to learn the tool. So I had this inherent motivation to do it just because I was interested in it and seeing what I could accomplish with it. And then it fizzled out, and nothing really came of it. But then a year later, a opportunity came up, and I was like, oh, you know what? I know this tool where you can do this in 3D and add some drawings to it. And it's really cool. And I had enough knowledge about it to pick it up again and learn a little bit more. So I would say be easy on yourself if you are learning a tool and it's just not that interesting to you. You don't have a particular need to do it. Be okay with just moving on to the next skill. Just try to dabble in a bunch of stuff. So I like to follow either need or innate curiosity, because that's going to take you over the hump. Otherwise, why are you torturing yourself, just to get through a random list that you created? Like, if you need it for a job, that you think you need it for a job, then learn it and create some things with it so you have a basic foundation. Or if you have some really specific interest in doing it, that's what I would try to follow.
Thank you. When you're creating things to learn skills, how do you decide if it's portfolio worthy or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I was doing was comparing it to my inspiration work. Like, if I felt like the insight that it showed was particularly interesting, or if I just felt like design-wise it looked nice, like the one I had about rain, it's just showing different amounts of rainfall throughout the year. Like, what's it really doing? I don't know. But it did show that I could make a graphic, and it showed that I could design it in a way that looked like it could be printed in a newspaper. So I think either or aesthetics and or if the insight that it's revealing is like very meaningful to you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Well, with that, I don't think there are any other questions in the chat, and we are at time. So thank you so much, Alli, for coming in today and telling us your background, your advice, and all sorts of skills and challenges to get us started with upskilling in the new year. Hopefully everybody was able to find something in this talk today to move forward with in their own journey in data visualization.
Yes, thanks everyone.
As Alli said, her email, let me put it up on the screen one more time, is hello@allitorban.com. She's also in the DVS Slack and Blue Sky. So people can reach out to you with questions and maybe feedback on things.
Yeah. If you want to send over your portfolio and just have a second pair of eyes, I'm very happy to do that too.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much. And with that, we're going to close out. See everyone in the new year.
Bye.